All right, time for an update on Low, my dungeon crawl board game, release candidate 1, playtesting. I've been almost completely offline for the last 3 weeks. First, I was in Paris for a week. It was part business trip for my wife and part vacation. We brought her mom along. And I made the executive decision not to bring my laptop on that trip. I really just needed a break. I'd been deep in the trenches with Low for many months and really just too close to it. I was starting to doubt every design decision I'd made and starting to plan like major refactors of the combat system and stuff. And I was like, whoa, let's just take a step back. Let's slow down. So that's what Paris was for me. It was a chance to just step away from everything. And then the day I got back from Paris, I found out that I had to make an emergency trip to southern Indiana to move my father-in-law from one elder care facility to another. And that took an entire week. I had to plan and execute the move and get the remainder of his stuff into a storage facility. It was kind of a big, long ordeal. And then after I got back from that, I was fried from all the travel. And I've spent this third week just kind of getting my head back in the game, poring over all the feedback that I've gotten on release candidate 1 so far, compiling it all into my master to-do list, and figuring out exactly what I need to do to get past this phase of testing. I want to give a shout out to my playtester Pere in Copenhagen. He's been playtesting this game a lot and has been giving me a ton of wonderful feedback. He's also been playing the game multiplayer. Every time he playtests a game, I'm getting 2 sets of eyes on the game, and I'm getting a lot of feedback that's the result of a lot of interesting back and forth between him and his playtesting partner. So I really appreciate that. Most of the feedback I get is in paragraph form, and it's just sent to me in emails as games are played. That's pretty much what I requested. I like to keep things very casual, very simple, and I like the playtesters to be able to express themselves however they want. So on my end, I have to take all that feedback, I have to take all those emails, I have to take all those paragraphs and reduce them into single line items. After I've decided, yes, I agree with this feedback, and yes, it's possible to implement, then I need to decide, should I implement it? Just because I can make a change doesn't necessarily mean I should make a change. So I have to go back and see if this change is going to bring the game closer to my original intention. Is it going to make it easier to learn or easier to play? Or I should say more intuitive to learn, more intuitive to play. And there's no objective way to measure this stuff. Usually it's kind of a gut instinct. You know, this list was probably twice as long at some point, but now my to-do item list is down to 3 pages, and I've been organizing it into categories. So these are all changes that I may make to the rule book. General questions, quest book revisions, 3 pages, you know, compared to the beta testing of this game, you know, I ended up with 12 full pages. This was probably 6 to begin with, and now I'm down to 3. So a lot fewer notes on this version of the game, but this is all still stuff that I need to figure out, I need to make decisions on, and I need to address. Now, some of these changes are very simple. For instance, you used to be able to stack multiple heroes on a single space, and at some point during release candidate 1, I switched it back to heroes can never occupy the same space. They can move through each other, but they can't end movement on the same space. There's a general consensus that 2 heroes should be able to stack on the same space. So now I'm going to change this back to the way it used to be. This is a very simple single sentence fix in the rule book. So this change will take like 30 seconds to make, no big deal. But then there's some other changes, like the warning AI is too simple and predictable. You know, it's a very simple thing to say, and it's probably true. There's a dozen different ways to fix this problem. And then there's also the question of, is it even a problem? You know, like the warnings are supposed to sort of drift ever so slightly through the dungeon. They're not really supposed to lock onto heroes. They're just sounds and smells that the heroes are aware of in the distance, but they don't know exactly where they are. They're kind of nebulous. So I want the warning counters to do something, because if they just sit there, they can often just sit in a corner and do nothing for the entire game. So it's better if the warnings are just slowly moving, toward a hero or toward the entrance, but we've tried several different configurations on the warning AI. It used to be a lot more complicated with all these different icons, and all these icons meant different things, and different warnings had different AIs. And then I was like, well, it's too complicated. Simplify it. I think the warnings are just going to move one space in a random direction each turn. So that's an example of something that I just really have to put some thought into and figure out. There's a huge discussion about the combat system, like revamping it and separating the simultaneous combat into hero combat and monster combat. And we did some playtesting on that, and it didn't feel right, and it created more problems than it solved. And then I went with just reordering combat. So just the order of operations changed, but the actual mechanics of combat stayed the same, and that's feeling a lot better. But then there's still some questions of, well, maybe we should let the hero calculate hits and damage on the hero phase first, and on the monster phase, the monsters calculate hits and damage first. So there's like a slight advantage whether you're the hero or the monster. And I think that makes a lot of sense, but I need to playtest that some more. So there's some things that are super quick fixes. There's some things that are simple observations with unclear solutions, and I just need to try a bunch of things to figure out which is best. And then there are some things that could lead to huge system refactors, but maybe they can just be tweaked a little bit. Maybe the wording changes, maybe the order of operations on a specific system changes, and that's enough. So other than just capturing all of this feedback, the other thing I've been doing this week is really just marinating in this list, and the things that I'm not sure how I want to implement, or if I want to implement, I'm thinking on, because a lot of times I'm just not sure what direction I want to go with a specific change until I spend a few days thinking about it, or until I've playtested it several times, or until I get some feedback from other playtesters. So shipping the game doesn't really boil down to just like checking items off the to-do list. My goal would be to get down to one single-sided page of to-do items by the end of this next week. And those will probably be things that I just need to spend this week thinking on and processing. So I was also going to talk about creative burnout a little bit. When I first started this game, like 2.5 years ago, I would have like some really productive months and some months where I just couldn't bring myself to do anything. And so the first half of the development on this game was pretty rocky and was pretty up and down. And then I would say over the course of the last year, I've been able to force myself to work even when I don't feel like it. Even when it's like the last thing I want to do, sit down on my laptop and work on the game. I've kind of gotten into a mode of creating where I can just sit down and force myself to do the work. And this has led to a lot more productivity and a lot more results. So I'm happy that I can do that, but I still get burned out. I still hit a wall creatively sometimes where I just can't make any more decisions. So I was definitely approaching like full-on creative burnout when I left for Paris. And the timing on that Paris trip was serendipitous, because I really needed a week where I didn't have to think about or look at low at all, and just let my mind wander creatively. Oftentimes when I'm feeling creative burnout, it's because I've just been outputting for so long, but not inputting. And, for me, inputting creative media is, it's like harvesting manna. And if your mana runs out, then, you got to go out into the wild and look for creative inspiration. Paris is a great place to do that. There's the lingerie. I saw the big Monets for the first time. The Musée d'Orsay had this Van Gogh retrospective, which kind of blew my mind. I'd never seen so many Van Goghs in one place at one time, and it was really kind of life-changing. And the Louis Vuitton Center had this huge Rothko exhibit. Never a huge fan of Rothko in the past, but this really changed my mind. Standing up close to dozens and dozens of Rothkos in these well-curated spaces really was just a game changer. And then just walking around Paris and admiring the cafe culture and the architecture and and all the art, and yeah, talk about reigniting the imagination. The more time I spend abroad this year, the more I realize that America has a lot of work to do. The cities in America are not looking good right now compared to everything I've seen in Europe this year. This is a book I picked up in Paris at one of the many comic book shops, The Art of Arzak. I've never seen this book before. It's bilingual, it's in French and English. And Mobius has always been one of my favorite artists. And to just get like a full dump of his Arzak world is wonderful. And if this isn't creative fuel, like I don't know what is. I think he's probably one of the best world builders that I've seen in my lifetime, and he has inspired like an entire generation of artists and game developers. But yeah, Mobius and his Arzak world is just so fantastic. Some of this art I've seen before in other publications, and some of it I've not seen before, so it's kind of nice. It's not all just regurgitated. Some of it's new to me, and I have a lot of Mobius books. I didn't take my laptop and I didn't work on low, but I did buy a sketchbook for my travels, and the goal of my sketchbook was really just no goal. I just wanted to engage in free thought, free creative thinking, and just see what I came up with. And I found myself working on a game design. This is nothing that I'm going to tackle at all until, you know, low has completely shipped and the expansions that I'm planning to build have shipped. But I've found myself working on kind of a realm crawl, so to speak, and no goals at all, really. Just imagining how a realm crawl might look. If I were playing a realm crawl that does not exist, what would it look like? What kind of features would it have? And so that's what I was playing with when I was traveling for the last couple of weeks. And this is just a prototype sketchbook that's always just going to be on my nightstand, just something I can pick up at the end of the day when I'm fried and I'm done thinking about important things, and I can just have some time for free thought. That's what this book is. Another thing I do, and I'm completely burned out creatively, is I grab random games out of my closet, browse through them, and read through rule sets. This is a game that my buddy Jason gave me for my birthday. It's from 1979. He found it in the basement of his wife's brother's house or something. I can't remember. But he was nice enough to give this to me. And Divine Right, 1979. And this game's kind of been sitting in my closet. I haven't really had time to learn it or play it, but the other day I was just grabbing random rule sets out of my studio and just reading them. So I was reading through this fantasy war game from 1979 and just seeing like all the little details that they put into it. And there's basic rules and advanced rules. There's all this different types of magic. Temple of the Kings, the magic gifts. And I just find this stuff inspirational. You know, this is like ludic world building codified into these rule sets. And it's just interesting to see how different developers organize this type of information in different ways, especially, you know, when you step into a time machine and go back like 40 years and see how they used to do it. And then the map on this thing is just crazy. I was thinking, you know, I love the new beautiful maps of Ringbound, but there's something to be said for these more graphical, iconic maps with these bold and almost obnoxious colors, the way it all fits together. And so that's inspirational, just to see like, oh, here's how you could do a map. So yeah, diving into the archives and just exploring these artifacts that I haven't had a whole lot of time to explore yet has really reignited me creatively and makes me want to finish low more than anything. And that was kind of the whole point to this stuff. Not a diversion, but a creative injection. And it makes me appreciate what I've done with this game. And I think that this project has merit, this project has value. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to ship with problems for sure, but it's going to be my tiny little contribution to the space